You're sitting at your kitchen table on a Tuesday night, laptop open, calculator app on your phone, a stack of papers spread out like evidence in a case you didn't know you were on trial for. Property tax bill, health insurance statement, daycare invoice, student loan payment confirmation. In the background, you hear water running, your spouse is doing dishes, and somehow that makes the whole thing feel even more brutally normal. You're not partying. You're not shopping. You're not doing anything reckless. You're just trying to understand where the money goes. And the part that messes with your head is this. You're not broke. You're doing well. 6 figures. A combined household income of, say, $110,000. That used to mean something. That used to mean comfortable. So why does it feel like you're one car repair away from groceries on a credit card? You run the numbers again, then a third time because they can't possibly be right, but they are. And in that moment, you feel what millions of people can't quite put into words. You're not lazy, you're not stupid, you're not irresponsible, yet you're always on the edge. That's the middle class in 2026. Not a lifestyle, a trap, a system that doesn't kill your wealth with one dramatic punch, but slowly, quietly, predictably, like it's suffocating you with a pillow made of monthly payments. My name is Sam, and today I want to explain something that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. The middle class isn't failing because they don't know how to budget. The middle class is failing because the modern cost structure is designed to convert good income into low margin. And low margin means low freedom. That's the real indicator. If you don't have margin, if you don't have money left over at the end of the month, you are not building wealth. You are servicing life. And yeah, someone is going to jump in right now and say, just spend less. Cool. Let's talk about where exactly spend less fits into the life of a family that isn't buying boats and designer bags and luxury vacations, but is just trying to keep a house standing, keep kids cared for, and keep jobs going. Picture a normal family. Let's call them the Andersons. Sarah is a marketing manager. Mike works in IT. 2 kids, 4 and 7, a modest 3-bedroom house in a decent school district, because that's what you do when you're trying to be responsible. They did everything right. Degrees, jobs, marriage, house. They followed the script. And yet they're not sleeping. Because the dream turned out not to be a destination. It's a contract. A contract with automatic withdrawals. A contract that renews every month whether you feel like it or not. The trap starts with the income illusion. On paper, we make $110,000. Sounds like stability. But you don't live on gross income. You live on what actually hits your account after the system takes its cut before you ever touch it. Payroll taxes, withholding, state taxes, insurance premiums, benefits. All of it disappears automatically. And here's what that does to your brain. Because the money vanishes before you ever decide anything, you stop feeling like you're choosing. You don't feel like you spent it. You feel like it was never yours. You adapt your entire life to the leftover, and that leftover becomes your reality, whether it makes sense or not. Then the second mechanism kicks in. Fixed costs. Fixed costs are financial gravity. They do not care about your mood. They do not care about your stress. They do not care that you had a hard month. They arrive on time every month like rent collectors inside your life. Mortgage, property tax, insurance, childcare, car payments, student loans, utilities, minimum debt payments. When the percentage of fixed costs gets too high, your life becomes fragile. And fragility is where wealth goes to die. Fragility means one surprise becomes debt. Debt becomes interest. Interest becomes that sick feeling that you work and somehow move backwards. And here's the really sick part. Every decision that creates the trap is rational on its own. A house? You needed the school district. 2 cars? How else do you commute and move kids around in a society built around driving? Childcare? Both parents have to work. Insurance? You can't not have it. Student loans? That's the price of entry for the careers. These aren't dumb choices. They're a chain of reasonable choices that stack into a system you can't breathe inside. Now follow their year. January hits and Mike looks at his paycheck like he always does. He knows his gross number. He knows what he should be bringing home. But what lands is less because federal withholding, Social Security, Medicare, state tax, health insurance premiums, maybe a few benefits. It all got pulled before the money ever touched his hands. Sarah's paycheck tells the same story, and now their six-figure income already feels smaller than the world expects it to be, because they don't live on six figures. They live on the remainder. February arrives and the property tax bill shows up, and this is one of those quiet middle-class humiliations nobody talks about. You own a home, but you don't feel like it's yours, because the house isn't an asset in your day-to-day experience. It's an obligation: mortgage, tax, insurance, maintenance, repairs, utilities. The house might build equity over time, but the monthly reality is a payment ecosystem that demands constant feeding. This doesn't mean buying a home is always bad. It means in the middle-class trap, homes are often purchased at the maximum tolerable level instead of the level that preserves margin. And when you buy at the maximum, you didn't buy freedom, you bought fragility. March comes around, taxes happen, and for a brief moment the Andersons see a refund and feel relief. It lasts about 45 seconds. Then they remember the credit card balance from January because the heating bill spiked, or the kid needed clothes, or the car needed something, and there wasn't margin. The refund doesn't become wealth, it becomes patchwork, it closes holes, and that's a major difference between building wealth and surviving. Wealthy systems create predictable surplus. Middle-class systems are constantly repairing damage. You don't get to invest long-term when you're always dealing with the short-term consequences of a life with no buffer. April. Daycare and after-school care. This is where the trap becomes undeniable. Kids aren't expensive because of toys. Kids are expensive because modern life turned childcare into infrastructure. You're paying for the ability to work. And when that infrastructure costs a huge percentage of income, you get a nightmare loop where two adults work full-time, partly to pay for the system that allows them to work full-time. It's not a life. It's logistics. It's a conveyor belt. Then we hit what I call financial whack-a-mole, the part where you finally think you're stabilizing, and then real life reminds you it doesn't care. June. The AC dies. You don't have $3,800 sitting around because your emergency fund is basically a decorative object, so you finance it. Now you've got a monthly payment for cold air. August. The 7-year-old needs braces. Insurance covers some, not all. You finance the rest. September. Tires are bald. Credit card. October. Transmission starts failing. You take a personal loan because you can't not fix it. Work requires a car. And notice something. None of this is luxury. This is not an Instagram life. This is normal life maintenance. And yet it creates a new layer of monthly debt payments that stack on top of the old ones. You're borrowing money not to build anything new, but to keep the existing system from collapsing. That's the most brutal kind of debt because it doesn't even come with joy. It just turns yesterday's emergency into the next 2 years of payments. By the end of the year, they're paying extra every month for things that broke. Not things they wanted, things that broke. That is the hidden definition of the middle-class trap. You're not buying your future, you're renting your stability, and the rent increases every time something fails. Now let's talk about why this is happening beyond bad choices. Because if you zoom out, you'll see something ugly. In 2026, a lot of essential costs have become private, mandatory, and overpriced. People argue about income tax like it's the whole story, but even if taxes were lower, the middle class would still be squeezed because the big-ticket essentials are priced like luxury goods. Healthcare isn't a service, it's a billing maze. Childcare isn't support, it's a second mortgage. Education isn't opportunity, it's decades of repayment. Transportation isn't optional, it's the price of participation in the economy. So when someone says, Americans aren't taxed that much, what they're really saying is, the government isn't the only one taking your money. Because the middle class pays a private tax, healthcare premiums, deductibles, out-of-pocket expenses, childcare costs, education payments, things that in many developed countries are bundled into taxes and provided as services. Here, they're separate line items with prices that grow faster than wages. And the psychological impact is brutal. You pay and feel like nothing gets better. Because for you, it doesn't. You're not paying for a shared system you can feel. You're paying for survival access. Add on top of that the invisible taxes nobody thinks about. Sales tax, fees, registrations, permits, gas taxes, phone bill surcharges, service charges that look small but never stop. Every one of them is a drip, and 1,000 drips can drown you when you have no margin. And then there's lifestyle inflation, the friendliest snake in the room. You get a raise, and you upgrade a little. Not because you're greedy, but because you're tired. You tell yourself, we deserve a more reliable car. We deserve to order food sometimes. We deserve a better neighborhood. We deserve a break. And you do deserve those things. But the trap converts raises into payments. So instead of buying freedom, you buy a slightly nicer version of stress. It feels like progress right up until you realize your income went up and your breathing room stayed the same, or got worse. So here's the real question. What kills middle-class wealth? It's not coffee. It's not Netflix. It's not a lack of discipline. It's 5 structural forces acting together. 1, a high fixed cost load. 2, privatized essential services that keep inflating. 3, debt systems that turn surprises into long-term payments. 4, tax and fee structures that hit wage earners hard while capital often plays by different rules. 5, a cultural expectation to look stable, which pushes people to live at the edge of their income instead of below it. All of this leads to the same outcome, low margin, and low margin means low freedom. Now the important part, how to escape in 2026. And I'm going to be blunt because this is where people waste years. You do not escape by budgeting harder. Budgeting is defense. Escape is offense. Escape is redesigning your system so you generate margin first, then convert that margin into ownership, then increase earning power through leverage. In that order. Because if you try to invest while your life is fragile, the first real emergency will yank you right back, and you'll conclude investing doesn't work. It works. You just had a leak. Step 1 is a fixed cost audit. Not where did we overspend, but what percentage of our take-home pay is pre-committed before we wake up. Housing with taxes and insurance, transportation, payments, insurance, baseline fuel, childcare, minimum debt payments, utilities and connectivity. If that number is too high, especially if you're hovering above the 50 to 60% range, you are in the danger zone, not because you're irresponsible, because you're fragile, and fragility is the #1 enemy of wealth building. Step 2 is creating margin. This is where it gets uncomfortable because margin doesn't come from cutting the tiny stuff first. Margin comes from confronting the monsters, housing, cars, and high-interest debt. That may mean downsizing. It may mean moving one zip code away. It may mean renting for a season. It may mean renting out a room. It may mean admitting the dream house became a golden cage. It may mean driving a boring car longer, even when your ego screams for an upgrade. I know people hate hearing this, but in 2026, freedom is more valuable than image, and the math doesn't care how you feel about it. Step 3 is killing high-interest debt. If you have a credit card balance at 20% and you're also trying to invest, you're playing tug-of-war against a stronger opponent. You need a small buffer so you don't bounce back into debt with the first surprise. Then you attack the highest interest balance aggressively and automatically. Make it boring. Make it inevitable. Your goal isn't debt-free someday. Your goal is stopping the leak, because you can't build wealth while bleeding out interest. Step 4 is building a real emergency fund, not a "we've got $900 fund," a real one, 3 to 6 months of expenses if possible, or at least a meaningful runway. And I want you to understand why this matters. Emergency funds are not about returns. They're about power. A real emergency fund turns you from prey into a negotiator. It allows you to handle repairs without debt. It lets you say no to bad job conditions. It gives you the ability to take smart risks. The middle-class trap depends on you not having this. The moment you build it, the trap starts to crack. Step 5 is converting income into ownership. This is the actual exit. Wages alone rarely create wealth in a world where essential costs inflate faster than pay. Ownership is what changes the game. Assets that grow, compound, and create future options. That can be retirement accounts, index funds, a business, equity, or any structure where money begins working without your hourly labor. You don't need to become a financial wizard. You just need to stop being only a worker. Workers live on what's left. Owners build what produces. Step 6 is increasing earning power through leverage, not hours. In 2026, grinding more hours often leads to burnout, not escape. You need a leverage skill, something that produces measurable results for businesses, makes money, or saves time. Performance marketing, sales systems, automation workflows, analytics, conversion-focused content, operations, project management. Pick a lane, commit for 6 months, and build proof. Projects, case studies, before and after results. Certifications can be nice, but proof is what changes your income. Leverage is when you're paid for impact, not time. Now let me say what you've probably been waiting for me to say. Yes, you should still control spending. Yes, you should still cut waste. But the reason the just skip lattes advice makes people rage is because lattes don't ruin families. Lack of margin ruins families. Repairs ruin families. Interest ruins families. A system where normal life is priced like luxury ruins families. When someone tells you to just be more disciplined, it's like telling a drowning person to just breathe better. No, you need to get to shore. Shore is margin, ownership, and leverage. If I were the Andersons, I'd do it like this. I'd start by telling the truth about fixed costs without sugarcoating it. Then I'd choose one big move that creates margin, housing, cars, or childcare logistics, because one big move beats 20 tiny ones. Then I'd eliminate high-interest debt and build a real emergency fund. Only then would I automate investing into ownership. And alongside that, I'd build one leverage-driven income stream, not 10 random side hustles, one focused skill that compounds. Because escape isn't chaos. Escape is a system. And here's the final point I want to leave you with. The middle-class trap survives on shame. It convinces you the problem is you, your discipline, your spending, your choices, so you keep trying to solve a structural math problem with willpower. But a lot of people aren't failing personal finance. They're operating inside a cost structure designed to keep them fragile. And when you're fragile, you can't build wealth. You can only react. So don't let shame keep you trapped. Redesign the system, protect margin like oxygen, convert income into ownership, build leverage so your earnings can grow without your life shrinking. That's the escape plan for 2026. If you want, drop one number in the comments. What percentage of your take-home pay is fixed costs before food and life? Even a rough guess. And if enough people ask, I'll put together a simple fixed cost audit checklist you can use in 20 minutes to map your situation and identify the fastest margin wins. I'm Sam. And remember, wealth doesn't start with how much you earn. It starts with how much freedom is left after life takes its cut.